I'm Tania, and my husband Don is at the back. He doesn't speak, but he will gladly answer questions afterwards. We did bring our 4 children today. If you guys want to stand up. So we have Callie, Quinn, Cameron, and Kieran. And Cameron has been to West Africa with us, and Kieran will be going in November. Yes. You can sit down. Okay, so like Charmaine was saying, in 2009, Dawn and I went on our first mission trip to Ghana, West Africa. We were there for 5 weeks, and we fell in love with the country. We fell in love with Africa itself, the people. It was an amazing experience, and it was with Youth for Christ as well. In 2013, Dawn was saying to me one day, I really feel like I'm being called to go back to Africa. And I said, well, if you go, I want to go too. But that was not what God had planned. It was within that week, Dawn received a phone call asking if he'd be interested in going to Liberia with Youth for Christ again. And while he was there, God called both of us to partner with Youth for Christ and essentially take over the project and continue the Youth for Christ journey in Liberia. And so we have. So basically, we're going to start off with Liberia itself. Most people don't know where it is because it's a tiny little country. It's about half the size of Ontario. And it is right there on the African coast. If you want to switch. So the first thing you see when you land in Liberia, it is on the coast, so it's very humid. The first thing you see is people everywhere. You get off the plane, there's people absolutely everywhere. It is hot. It's about 45 degrees with the humidity every day. I love it. Dawn does not. And you see a lot of garbage because there's no infrastructure in Liberia. There's no infrastructure in a lot of Africa. So no public, I'm going to put this here. No public garbage disposals, no sewers, everything's open pit sewers. So it's the sight of garbage and the smell of just people and human waste and charcoal and food cooking and diesel from vehicles. It's very overwhelming when you get off the plane. And again, it's one of the poorest countries. It has the second poorest slum in Africa. We stay in the capital of Monrovia. This is just, can we dim the lights a little bit? Is that? So because it is such a poor country, you see a lot of this type of scene. So this is just driving through the capital. This would be this little boy out front. This is where he lives and where his family store is as well. There would be no running water. Usually there is a public well, but there is also tribal warfare. So sometimes the neighboring group of people will poison another person's well. So there is a lot of that goes on as well. You can change it. But this is a typical residence in Liberia. So everything is made of scrap metal of what they can find. There is a lot of vegetation because it is jungle country, but it's very dry. So the water is ocean and further inland. So in 2012, Ebola hit Liberia. It wasn't a problem, it wasn't what you were hearing in the news, and it escalated to 2014 is when we were on the news. Liberia was number one. Everybody heard about it, everybody knew about it. Ebola, Ebola, Ebola. What is Ebola? Ebola is a disease that affects your body. It causes your body, the internal organs to perforate and bleed out, and you pass away from that. So it was a huge epidemic. About 5,000 people died in the capital of Monrovia alone. It spread through human contact, which created a huge problem in West Africa because the way they pay respect to their deceased is they touch the body. And even after death, people were passing Ebola to their loved ones. So the government had to step in and forbid that from happening. So this is an important slide to me because this person is on a street It looks pretty typical, right? So he is what you saw in the news. He's on the street, he's sick with Ebola, there's an ambulance there are people helping out. These are the type of images that we in North America were seeing come out of the Ebola epidemic. But when we got there, I actually saw that ambulance, and I know I saw that ambulance because there are only 2 in the entire country. But the government is so corrupt and so strict that they restricted what the media was allowed to portray out. And every picture that came across to North America were ambulance and ambulance attendants helping people, which was not true. There's 1 ambulance there and 1 at the other end of the country. So it gives you an idea of how corrupt that society is and how hard it is for people to get their needs across to North America, because the government really does put a strong hold on that. So this is another image. This is somebody who passed away from Ebola and is being carried out by a hazmat team. What happened if you passed away from Ebola? A hazmat team would come to a slum community, this is New Crewtown, and would go door to door finding deceased people. They would wrap them up, they would remove them, they would remove the belongings from the house, and they would burn the bodies and all the belongings. So that meant if you were a 4-year-old child and your parents passed away, you were left in the home, and they would remove the parents, remove everything, burn everything, and leave you there. So because of that, and because of children starving and being abandoned, a Youth for Christ offset team, so a team from Youth for Christ partnered with another organization and went around looking for Ebola orphans. They located 2,000 Ebola orphans and have managed to get them into Christian schools and into orphanages or with other family members. And they are still out there, these orphans. They're still finding them to this day. So that street, this is when I was in Africa in 2015. That image was taken at the far end of that street. So it makes it very real when you're walking down a street and somebody says to you, my brother died where you're standing. Or the story that touched my heart was I was standing talking to a man about Ebola orphans, and he said, just so you know, where you are standing is where we had a mother who was pregnant pass away and lost the child as well from Ebola. And it really touched my heart to know that you're in that same place, and it's horrific, and it's crowded, and it's full of people who have suffered from what's going on, and we are so separate from that in North America. So this is just an example of things the government did set up. This is an Ebola wash station. So anywhere you went, in near schools and public offices, you would see these. And it is just running water with pictures, because a lot of people are illiterate. So pictures on washing your hands. So there's no soap, there's no detergent of any kind, just water. And that's what they were using to try and fight the disease. So this little girl is an Ebola orphan. Her mother died. She contracted Ebola from taking care of a family member. She passed away. Her father contracted it from taking care of the mother and passed away. And she was left in a home. She was found in a home about 6 days after they had been removed. She was 4 at the time. She is now living with family members, other family members. She is attending a Christian school, and all of that was paid for from Youth for Christ sponsorship here, being sent over there. So her school fees are $60 a year, and that covers her meals, her uniform, and her school. So we had a bunch of kids from my kids' school, so I think there was about 50 of them get together and donate school supplies. So this was them getting this is another Ebola orphan as well, receiving their school supplies and coloring books. So if you survive Ebola, you get a certificate. The certificate says, I am a survivor. So you are by law required to carry this certificate around. This is Dorothy Sawyer. She survived. We met her. This woman survived Ebola, but because she was a survivor, they took her to a hospital for people affected with Ebola, and the government made her stay there for 3 months She was unable to leave, and they forced her to work taking care of sick people because you can't contract it again. She lost all her kids in this process. They were taken by family members. To this day, have still not been returned because she is a survivor. People are scared of her. When she did finally get released from the hospital, she lost her job. Her boss was scared she would give him Ebola, even though she wouldn't. He was scared, so he fired her. The day that I met her, she was evicted from her home. So she has lost her children. She had 6 children. She has lost them all. She had lost her job, and she had lost her place to live. That Sunday, she was in church worshiping. It was a dance service. So it was worship music and dancing for 3 hours, and she danced and worshiped for 3 hours, praising God for her life. So, pretty amazing. So I want to share the opportunities that we receive when we go to Ebola, because God is good, and He comes up with some amazing things that people have donated to us that we have not asked for or ever expected. And one of them was a nurse at Ottawa General Hospital was sick of seeing the waste that happens in the hospital. Medical supplies in Canada have an expiry date, but our Canadian government makes that expiry date less than what they could be. So if something expires in 2 years, our government says in a year you have to get rid of it. Well, she collected for 3 months all of those supplies, and we were able to furnish a clinic that served 70,000 people with more supplies than they had ever received. And I'm talking gauze pads, sutures, cauterizers. We had things that I don't even know what they do. And we handed her a bottle of, they use for malaria, because malaria is big there. It's Advil, it's just a basic Advil extra strength capsule. And it really helps to lessen the malaria symptoms. And we handed her a big bottle, like it was huge. And she started crying, because that was more medication than that hospital had in it at that time. So this is one of my husband's favorite communities. This is the Doe community. So Monrovia, the capital of Liberia, is composed of smaller slum communities. So the Doe community is the poorest community. The Doe community was set up because the Liberian government decided that they wanted to invite the UN in. The UN has been patrolling Liberia and in Liberia for a long time, but they wanted to show the government officials from the UN how good they were doing. So they built a bunch of homes on a floodplain during the dry season. So when the UN officials came in, it looked really good. They were supplying homes for the homeless. They were doing their job. In the wet season, these homes will flood up to where you can see the water lines on the buildings, and people sleep in water. They usually pile as much as they can to get out of the water, but it is wet. Everything is wet. We were at the end of the dry season, and you can see this pastor in front, this lady, was taking us to her church, walking on bricks, because that's how bad it gets there. And there is about 20,000 people living in that community, and that community is 10 acres wide. Yeah. These are some kids from that community. This is one of my favorite stories out of our time in Africa last year. Our church donated 75 Bible tracts. So you know what I mean when I say that? The little Bible stories on cards that look like cartoons. And it was Jonah. And I thought, okay, I'll take them, see what happens. We go to the Doe community, and we run a children's ministry there. So we invited the children from the community out to listen to our story of Jonah. Now, you have to remember, there is 20,000 people in 10 acres. The average age in Liberia is 18. So there's a lot of children. We were very worried that we would not have enough tracts to accommodate all the children that would come. So we began our story. We acted out the play of Jonah. We taught them the story. We had them repeat the story to us. And at the end, we decided to hand out the tracts. and we were praying. We were at each side of the building, each exit, and we're handing these things out and praying and praying and praying that no kid would be left out. By the time we were done, there was 75 tracts, there were 75 kids, and we were able to hand each one of them a tract. It was amazing. And then each one of them that we handed a tract was so excited, they started retelling the stories to us, or saying, I'm going to tell my mom when I get home, or I'm going to tell my dad. It was pretty amazing. I just loved her. She was just adorable, so that's why I threw that picture in there. But these children live in poverty like you've never seen. They will not eat if they get one meal a day, that's very good. A lot of their parents are having to travel for work because there's no work in the Doe community, so a lot of money is spent on travel. And as far as food goes, when they do eat, it's usually rice, or if they're lucky, it's fish. Lizards that you see running around, they'll catch them and eat them. It's sad and it breaks your heart, but when I said to a West African, how do you not cry every single day? He said to me, if we started crying, we would never stop, so we don't cry. So this lady here is our role model. This is Dieta. Dieta is unbelievable. She became a Christian because of Canadian missionaries that came to her village, and she is just an inspiration. We are building a school in West Africa. We are building a school that will run as an elementary school for grades kindergarten to grade 6. Then in the evenings, our school will be used as a trade center for teens and young adults to learn a trade. Because Liberia is a war-torn country, because they were in civil war for 10 years, there are not a lot of educated people. There is not a lot of older people. It is very rare to see somebody over the age of 50. So it's a country of broken childhoods and uneducated people trying to raise children. It seems hopeless, but when you can teach somebody something, you give them a chance. So that's our dream, that's our goal. So this is Dieta, and that's exactly what she did. She is a principal, she's a seamstress, she's a teacher, and when she came to the capital of Monrovia, she saw a need. She saw hundreds of kids outside playing when they should be in school. She saw hundreds of kids with no fathers. She saw hundreds of kids with no mothers, just orphans running in the street, and she wanted to do something about it. So she worked as a seamstress at night, and there's her sewing machine. It's a hand crank sewing machine, and she makes unbelievable stuff and fast. And she worked as a seamstress at night and teacher during the day, and she saved and raised enough money to build her own school. What she does is she takes, in Liberia, you have to have uniforms for your students, or the government will not recognize you as a school. So she made all the kids t-shirts. So these are their little t-shirts. You can see. And the ones that don't have t-shirts, she invites them in anyway, because she wants to educate as many as she can. And then in the evenings, she educates their mothers. She teaches them how to sew so that they have a trade. So once the kids are out of her school, the mothers can support them furthering their education. And her school, Dieta's school, it goes from, in Liberia, school starts at age 2. So it goes from age 2 until whatever age they are, but it's about grade 7. So we met boys that were 14 that were in grade 5 because they had never gotten an education, and they were not embarrassed. They were excited to be in their school. When we went to Dieta's school, it was rough. This is a blackboard. It's just a piece of wood that they write on. They do have other pieces they've painted black. Everybody sits on the dirt floor. There's one washroom, and it's very rough as well, dugout hole. But every single child there was happy to see us, and every single child was excited to learn. And that is our goal. That is what we want. She teaches a Christian education, Again, in Liberia, to be considered a Christian school, you have to have certain criteria that are really difficult to meet. But you can teach a Christian education and not be a Christian school, and the government's totally fine with that. So that's what she does. So these kids right here are learning verses from the Bible and repeating them. And it's pretty amazing to watch and to listen to them. And when they're 2 years old and you walk into their classroom and about 50 of them stand up and say, "Hello, visitor, it's happy to meet you." Oh my goodness, like how does your heart not melt for that? So this is our school. So Liberia, like I said, was in civil war for 10 years. During that time, Youth for Christ was holding a deed to a property it had been given. It protected that property through death, through displacement, through everything you could think of. God protected that property and protected that deed. And now we are able to use it. So we are clearing the land. This is our building, Dawn working. Like I said, it's 45 degrees. It is hot. You work for about 15 minutes and you need to stop and drink some water because you are dying. But Liberians, who are used to this heat, they can go all day. It's unbelievable. So these kids, this was our team clearing out brush because it builds up fast in the jungle. So they're clearing out brush. So all these kids helping up here, down here, they are kids from the community that are helping, volunteering their time because they know it's a school and they know how important it is and they know they're going to be there for free one day. So these kids, we gave them all suckers, so that helped them coming back too. But they were amazing and lugging bricks and no complaining and just wanting to talk to you and to get to know you. And it's an excellent opportunity to share your faith with kids because they want to know why you're there, why you care. So when you can tell them, "I'm here because God loves you," that's amazing. So this is Liberia scaffolding. It's terrifying. We do not let our team go on that. It is pieces of bamboo, and sometimes it's like that tall plus 3. And they just whoop up there and do their work and get down, and it just terrifies me. So what we did in 2015, we managed to build anything that's dark, shaded, and up. Those are the bricks we managed to build. This is them mixing cement. So we have gotten to the point in our first stage of building that we are roof ready. So when we go back this November, we'll be putting the roof on and they'll be starting classes. This is from the outside. Our dream for the property is that one day it'll be cleared and we can have a home, a caretaker home on the community, on the property, and bring people from Canada, educators, people who know trades, people who know sewing and hairstyling and everything you can think of, and stay at the property for months at a time and teach. So that's our dream, that's our goal one day. So while we were in Liberia, this is our team we had last year. This guy on the end in the plaid shirt, his name is Bishop Kunkun. He is one of the top, I guess, what would you call him, pastoral figures in Liberia. And then the guy in the middle, you may have heard of him, his name is Joshua Blythe. Joshua Blythe is formerly known as General Butt Naked. During the war, the Civil War, Joshua Blythe was the spiritual advisor to the president. At 11 years old, he had more power than the president because of the tribe he was in. He was a Satan worshiper, and he was a satanic priest. He was shot at. Many people tried to kill him. He was not harmed at all because that was the power of Satan in him. He would recruit children. He would force them to kill their parents, and he would take them and make them fight for him. He would slaughter children as sacrifices. He has admitted to a war crimes tribunal that he has killed over 20,000 people. And he is a Christian. Bishop Kunkun was 25 years old, and he was a young pastor, and he had been praying for the demise of the generals of Liberia so the war would end, and he prayed through them, and they were dying as he was praying. And he got to General Butt Naked, and he couldn't pray for him to die. God said, I need him. So at 25 years old, Bishop Kunkun decided to go visit him. Joshua was in his shrine worshiping Satan when he heard a knock on the door, and it was Bishop Kunkun. He let him in, and he said, how did you get past my guards? And Bishop Kunkun told him it was the power of Christ. So Joshua said, okay, I'll hear what you have to say. So he told him the story of Jesus. He told him what he was doing was wrong, and he needed to repent from his sins, and that Jesus loved him and wanted him to be his child. And Joshua said, I'm going to let you leave. I will not kill you, but I may kill you next time. So he left, and on his way out, Joshua killed 2 of his boys that were supposed to be guarding his door because Bishop Kunkun was able to get to him. So Bishop Kunkun kept coming back day after day after day, and eventually Joshua decided, okay, maybe there might be something to this Jesus thing. So he allowed Bishop Kunkun to pray with him. He did not ask him to forgive his sins. He did not become a Christian, but he allowed him to pray with him, which is the first step. So the fighting began very fierce one day, and a lot of Joshua's boys were killed, and a lot of other rebels were killed. So he decided to sacrifice a child so that he could protect him and his boys. He sacrificed this child very reluctantly. He said it was the first time he had ever sacrificed a child and felt guilt. He went down to the river to wash his hands, and he said he was crying, which is the first time he's ever cried after sacrificing a child. And he looked up, and there was Jesus. He didn't know who he was. He didn't know. All he said he could feel was the power of Christ. And he was terrified, and he was trying to curse him and make him go away, and he wouldn't go away. And Jesus looked at him and said, my son. He didn't know what to do. So he went back to his elders, and he told them what had happened. And they said, well, we have to make him go away. They were scared because they knew. They knew the power of Christ. So Joshua decided to talk to Bishop Kunkun and about this experience, about the fact that Jesus had so much power, because it was the power he was first attracted to. How come I couldn't curse him away? How come I couldn't make him go away from me? So he wanted that power. But as he talked to Bishop Kunkun, as he started learning more and more about Jesus, he decided, I don't want the power, I want the forgiveness. And I want the grace. He said it was the first time in his life he had heard of somebody divine, wanting nothing from you but your love. Because with everyone else he had worshipped, every other evil person or thing that he had followed, they wanted something. They wanted something from him except for Jesus. So he became a follower of Christ. And when he became a follower of Christ, he released all of his soldiers. And he still does, he goes from home to home, asking for forgiveness for the people he's harmed, and making things, atoning for his sins, essentially. He did approach the War Crimes Tribunal. He's the only person in history who has. He went up to them and he said, I have killed over 20,000 people. Punish me. And they said, we can't, because we weren't established when you did those crimes. Yes. So to him, and I believe it too, that was such a huge act of God, because he's needed for other things. So what Joshua does is he has a compound where he goes around finding former child soldiers who are rejected from society, and he takes them in and he teaches them a trade, he teaches them about Christ, and then he sends them to their home villages where they are to build a home for someone they've wronged with the trades they've learned and to ask for forgiveness. And it's an amazing, amazing thing. When you're standing there listening to the story of a warlord and the horrific things he's done, and then you see him crying and breaking down and just broken for the boys that he has harmed, for those soldiers and families he has harmed, you can't help but feel the power of Jesus. It's unbelievable. So we are fortunate enough that we have partnered with him to help build our school. So his former soldiers are going to be laying bricks and working alongside us building the school. So that is, it's a huge opportunity. It's an amazing opportunity for not only the people in our community where we're building, but for his boys as well. So I'll play you, he's hard to understand, that's why I told the story first, but you can listen to a clip of him telling his story.
Well, my name is Joshua Milton Bly. I was known as General Botneke in the Liberian Civil War. I was a warlord who had a brigade that was with naked people. And we were naked because we were not using physical military tactics. We were using spiritual tactics. And it came about because I was the priest to my tribe. I was born to be the priest to my tribe, the Crown tribe that Sergeant Doe, the one who overthrew Tolba, came from. He was a crown man, and I was the priest to him. So I advised him and gave him spiritual guardians and the rest of the tribe. So when the war came, 1989, I needed to protect the tribe as a priest. And to protect the tribe, I made a lot of innocent children sacrifices to the deity to accumulate more spiritual powers for the protection or for the implementation of my protection over the tribe. And several human sacrifices. And one last sacrifice that was so hard to do because the child that was used was brought by her own mother, and she was so beautiful and peaceful. She was being given to me and she was like smiling, you know, and I thought that child should not die. But with the demand, you know, from darkness, the demand from evil, the demand from the mother, and seeing my people die, I had to sacrifice her. And right after that sacrifice, the blood stain of that child was in my hand when the Lord Jesus Christ appeared to me. He appeared to me not in the dream physically, and he called me his son with the blood of this innocent child in my hands. And he asked me to repent, which was the beginning of my life turning around. And I repented by the grace of God.
So if you've ever met a new Christian, okay, have you ever met a new Christian and they're so excited and they're so passionate and they're so ready to do Jesus' work? He's been a Christian for 14 years and he is the exact same. He is so exciting to be around because he's just so full of love and excitement and just Jesus. It's unbelievable. It's very contagious, and he's a very big man. Like, he's very intimidating. He's just, even his hands are massive. But when he stands up and says, "That's the power of Jesus," you're like, it is the power. You can change. So we went to visit Joshua the day after hearing his story, and we pull up, and he's sitting with another pastor, and he's playing chess. And it was quiet and it was surreal, and it was just an unbelievable image that will be in my mind forever. And his boys, he calls them his boys, his former soldiers. Some of them are living on the property with him. Some of them came up for the day. So we got to interact with them and meet them. You can change the... So this is what they were doing. They're making the clay bricks. This is the trade he's taught them so they can build homes. In Liberia, Liberia was founded by slaves. So freed slaves from the US were shipped to Liberia and dropped. So a lot of what they know is from North America. A lot of what they want is from North America. When you go to other parts of West Africa, you see a lot of traditional dress, a lot of traditional buildings, artwork, things like that. But Liberia is always striving to be like America. So they started building their homes out of concrete blocks. Concrete blocks cost a lot of money. Most of the cement has to be shipped in, which is expensive. But before that, they were all built with clay. So Joshua has taken that knowledge and is reteaching how they do these things. So basically what he's done is by building with clay, which is abundant in Liberia, he's taken a home that the average person could never afford because it was costing $20,000, and he's reduced it down to $5,000 by building with clay. So he's making things attainable for people. See, this is just one clay rock face in Liberia, and they're everywhere. This is my husband. So we get there, and Joshua says, first of all, we went because Don's a millwright and can build things. So he was wanting to see the machines to see how he could replicate it to make them here and bring them there. Or essentially what we've decided is to take the plans there and teach them how to build them. Right? It's that teach a man versus give a man philosophy. Yeah. So we get there, and Joshua in the red there says, well, I have a welder, but I don't know how to use it. So Don said, well, okay, I'll take a look at it. Pulls it out. He's like, oh, we use these all the time at work. Do, and away it goes. So he was the hero for the day. So essentially what we're doing, like I said, we go over to Liberia. We're going in November. We are building a school. The project is a 5-year lifespan. We've been working on it this is our 3rd year. We're hoping to have it done by the end of that 5 years. We have a Youth for Christ employee in Liberia who is a former school principal. So he is willing to take over the school and run his office for Youth for Christ out of there, and then also work as a principal. In Liberia, they have teachers' college like they have here, but they have to donate a huge portion of time to learning how to teach, because it's not like it is here. Right? The classroom hours are far less, the practical hours are far more. So we have a lot of teachers who we are able to access those resources and use them for our teaching. So our school is very sustainable. We're looking at about $2,000 to run the school a year, which is unbelievable. And that's also providing food for the kids, one meal a day. While we're there, we also do children's programs. So we go into schools and we talk to teens and we talk to kids about just Jesus love. We talk to them about life in Canada. They all want to know about life here. We also do a church ministry. We go into churches as their guests, and we do some speaking there as well, and then into the communities. So it's a very kind of eclectic ministry because we have so many things that we do, but everything is based on Jesus and everything is based on God's love. And that's what drew us to Youth for Christ and to this project. My son, Cameron, in 2015, like I said, came with us, and he went to one of the high schools, and he got to speak in front of a grade 10 class. And what were some of the things they asked you?
They asked me about what school in Canada is like. Sorry. And I told them, like, here in Canada, almost everyone has the opportunity to go to school, but a lot of people don't want to, and I was asked them what it's like there, and they said it's pretty much the opposite. A lot of people want to go to school, but not many get the opportunity to. And one of the students there, he said to me that in Liberia things are very difficult. Life in general is difficult, yet they're striving and working towards making their country better and bringing themselves out of the places of the poverty situation that they're in. And that really just amazed me. And all the kids, even though they struggled to get enough money to go to school each month and stuff like that, they were so happy and had so much joy in the fact that they got to go to school. It was really cool.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome to experience anything in a poverty-stricken country, because even though they are so monetarily poor, they are usually so spiritually rich. Liberia is so spiritually rich. When somebody says that they're a Christian, they are excited to say they're a Christian. And there are definitely people who still need to hear the message of Christ, especially in the interior of the country. It is very voodoo rich. But the people that are hearing it and they're loving it and they're experiencing it and they're experiencing the power of God and they're just flourishing. They're blooming. It's unbelievable. And even though you guys are a small church, it doesn't mean that you can't do great things for missions and that you're not doing great things for missions. Even if you feel like you're only giving a little bit or you're only praying it means the world to people like us. It really does. And it means even more to the people over there. We have just one quick story about these kids at the Anglican Church in Brighton. There's how many kids, Dawn? 7 or 8 kids, and they raised $1,000 last year having a bake sale Sunday mornings. And that money went to an orphanage in Liberia, and that money made a huge difference to these kids. And it's, like I said, it's not just financial, it's your prayers. They mean so much to us. We get spiritually attacked every time we go to Liberia, every time we gear up, anytime we do something like this, we get spiritually attacked because Satan doesn't want it to happen. So when you pray for us, you're helping to stop that. You're helping to safeguard our family. You're helping to safeguard the people there, other missions that you pray for, and we appreciate it so much. So thank you for this opportunity. Thank you for listening to me go on about my stories. So after the service, feel free to talk to Don and I. He's really, really good at answering questions, even though he's not up here. And you can talk to the kids. And I really hope you do, because I'd like to get to know all of you guys. So thank you.